Hold on. I'll start in a second. Let me fix my mustache. Good. Do a little stretching. Awesome. Hello, Comic-Con audience. Look at this. We're doing a some kind of live stream Comic-Con thing. In some senses, it's the best of Comic-Con coming at you. In some senses, it's the worst of Comic-Con. It's for me, it's Comic-Con where I can't go shopping for Transformer toys, which is a real detriment to me. On the other hand, it's almost the only form of Comic-Con where I'll actually get to attend some Hall H panels that I'm not on. So I'm very excited about that. Hopefully I'll get to see a trailer for a new Marvel movie, or, you know, some kind of new trailer for a movie that may at some point come out in the future when all of this pandemic nonsense is finally over. I'm very excited about the prospect of that. I guess I'll just dive right in. Most of the time, I'm very unprepared for these panels. This is no different. A lot of times I'll open these Comic-Con panels by saying, you know, I meant to have a slideshow. I wanted to be able to show you some cool images from some books that we have upcoming. And then I don't, because I don't prepare that kind of stuff. But the best thing about this is that we're going to be able to do that. I'm going to be able to talk and ramble about some of the comics that we have upcoming. And they're going to pop in the images after the fact, which will be really cool. So it'll seem, I think, maybe, this part notwithstanding, that this panel is a little bit more professional than the panels I've done in the past. So that I'm excited about. The thing I'm not excited about is that because of the format with the video and everything, you guys are going to be playing a game the entire panel that I like to call, Where Are Robert Kirkman's Ears? Why are they not visible? He does have ears, right? Is it the size of his head? Is it the shape of his head? Is it the amount of body fat this guy carries? How are these ears so invisible? I even have an AirPod. Is it AirPod, EarPod? I don't even know. In my ear that you can't see when I face camera. Pretty embarrassing. So I try to draw attention to it. Anyway, despite the pandemic, got a lot of big stuff going on this year. I just launched a book called Firepower with Chris Samnee, one of the best artists that's ever worked in comics. Colored by Matt Wilson. It's lettered by Russ Wooten. Just launched at the beginning of July, which is in the future as I record this, but it's in the past as you see this. So that's going to be a little awkward. Hopefully it was a big hit and people liked it. It'd be really weird if I'm talking about it and everyone hated it. I'm pretty confident that people will like it, though. It's a great book. It's about a guy named Owen Johnson who was adopted. He lives in St. Louis, but he's got Chinese heritage. He wants to go to China to find out a little bit about his birth parents, gets drawn into a mystical world of martial arts, and learns to throw fireballs, and it's super cool. It's a great action comic. It's got all kinds of cool, fun stuff in it. It's a monthly series. I think we're probably showing you some kind of images as I ramble on. Some great coloring by Matt Wilson, cool art by Chris Samnee, maybe a couple of covers from some future issues that are coming up in months like August and possibly September and October. Lots of cool stuff coming up. So very excited about that. Recently celebrated the 25th issue of a book called Oblivion Song with co-creator Lorenzo De Felici, the Italian powerhouse that I like to call the Italian powerhouse. We've got Annalisa Leone, who's coloring the book, and the old Russ Wooten, who letters all my stuff, doing that as well. The 25th issue, we experienced another time jump after our character Nathan Cole had been, that's right, I forgot his name for a split second. You probably didn't even notice, did you? I do a lot of books, and I'm very old. So anyway, Nathan Cole got trapped in Oblivion, which was kind of the setup for the book to begin with, that his brother was trapped in Oblivion. So he's been in Oblivion for 3 years as we come into issue 25. And we find out that the Cathal, who we've been calling the Faceless Men until we found out what their actual name was, planning to invade Earth. So there's some big stuff brewing in that book, a book that started out as a small, independently run organization where a scientist is breaking into another dimension to find his brother that was stranded there, that has now evolved into what's going to be a massive alien invasion book with all kinds of crazy world-spanning action. It's going to be a fun evolution for that series, and I'm very excited for all the things that are coming up. in that book. Another book I'm doing, Die, 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 co-written by Scott M. Gimple. Scott, of course, is the former showrunner, current chief executive, CEO, creative officer of the Walking Dead empire. You know, trying to make sure that there are at least 17 Walking Dead shows before the end of this decade. It's going to be a lot of fun. But anyway, he co-writes that book with me. It's drawn by a guy named Chris Burnham. We've got Nathan Fairburn coloring it, Russ Wooten lettering it. It is a crazy comic all about, let's say, government shenanigans and espionage. We're ramping up to 14th issue, which is going to be capping off our second arc. That is going to be the absolute craziest comic book I've ever written. Probably the craziest comic book that Chris Burnham has ever drawn, if you haven't read Officer Down. And it's going to feature Barack Obama fighting a bunch of aliens. And I swear it totally fits in with the story of that series, and involves a lot of different things that have been building, and is going to set us up for some cool things in the future. And I'm very excited about that comic because it is the zaniest, nuttiest thing I've ever been involved with. And I did a book called Battle Pope. Next up, I've got a book called Outcast that I feel like for the last 3 or 4 conventions I've done, I've been promoting the end of that series. And the book just hasn't ended. Pandemic being what it was, it gave me a brief time to rethink the ending of that series. I didn't really change the story per se, but I did expand on what the ending of that series is. So now 47 and 48 of that series are both going to be extra-sized issues. 48 is going to be a double-sized issue. That was not part of the plan. It has pushed back the end of that series by a little bit. I believe the end of the series is now going to be coming in October. Paul is feverishly drawing that series conclusion as I speak. And I wrote it very slowly, so any delays are definitely not his fault, I should say. But we've expanded the ending, made it a little bit more epic, a little bit more of what I originally envisioned. And that's the only good thing to have come from this pandemic, is expanding the end of Outcast. We recently announced that the Walking Dead series is going to be republished in single issue form, not to be collected, in color. So if you want to experience The Walking Dead in color from the first issue starting in October, you will be able to do that. We're going to be doing a very cool thing with this. Dave McKeag is coloring the series. There's a little thing called the cutting room floor that we solicited, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years ago, but I'm old. It was probably more like 10 years. That never came out. It was a book that was supposed to collect all of my handwritten plots, because I have handwritten every plot for every issue of The Walking Dead on a piece of paper with a pencil. Fun fact, I wrote them with the same pencil, a Pentel mechanical pencil my father gave me when I was in the 7th grade. That is my special writing pencil. And if I were ever to lose that pencil, I would not be able to write. At least that's what I tell myself. Please don't steal it if you ever see me with it. It's very important to me. That may all seem like a joke. It's not. Anyway, we're going to be printing those handwritten plots in the back of every issue with a lot of commentary. The cool thing about that is that there are times in the Walking Dead series where I completely changed my mind and was like, well, the story was going to go this way, but now it's going to go this way. So over the course of this reprint series, I'll be revealing, little detours, little nooks and crannies that weren't explored, little stories that could have happened. Maybe Shane could have lived. Maybe Lori could have lived. Maybe a bunch of different characters could have lived. It's mainly what the changes are. Characters that didn't die. But yeah, so it's going to be a deluxe package that will take a look at all kinds of different behind the scenes stuff in The Walking Dead. We're going to have a lot of really cool new covers by guys like Arthur Adams and David Finch and Julian Tino Tedesco. Some more along the way, so stay tuned. But it's going to be a really cool celebration of the Walking Dead series that we all know and love in a new light. And Dave McKeag is very deep into the run coloring it. And I got to say, the book looks absolutely spectacular. So I can't wait to share it all with you all over again for many, many years to come. Talk briefly about Invincible. We talked a little bit at the Skybound Expo about the upcoming Invincible animated series. Or rather, we will right now. That hasn't happened yet. So this is a little crazy. Maybe I'm going to say something here that we haven't said yet. Maybe I'm going to reveal things I shouldn't reveal. Who knows? But I did want to talk about, Amazon Prime, Invincible animated series. It's going to be great. We got a spectacular cast that we talked about at the Skybound Expo, being led by Stephen Yun, J.K. Simmons, and Sandra Oh, who are going to be playing Mark Grayson, Nolan Grayson, and Debbie Grayson. We've revealed some of the other cast, but I'm going to talk about the Guardians of the Globe here because I don't think we talked about that at the Skybound Expo. I'm very excited because the cast of the Guardians of the Globe is very special. The character of the Immortal is going to be played by a guy named Ross Marquand. And yeah, I'm looking down to make sure I don't mess anything up. War Woman is going to be played by Lauren Cohan. You may detect a theme here. The character of Red Rush is going to be played by a guy named Michael Cudlitz. The character of Darkwing is going to be played by Lenny James. The character of Martian Man is going to be played by Chad Coleman. And the character of Green Ghost, who is now female. She's male in the comic, but, I was in my early 20s and we didn't put enough women in Invincible. So Green Ghost now a woman. Green Ghost, played by Sonequa Martin Green. And we didn't do that on purpose. The Green Ghost, Sonequa Martin Green thing, just now realizing that. Also playing Aquarius, pulling double duty, will be Ross Marquand. If you know anything about Invincible and you know anything about the Guardians of the Globe and the story of Invincible, there is a extra significance for having Walking Dead actors play all of these characters, which I think is very fun and very exciting. And I can't wait for you guys to all see that series when it debuts on Amazon Prime in the future. Okay, so now we're going to get into this little question and answer session where you guys are going to ask me questions, and then I am going to answer them. First up, we've got a guy named Gregory O'Mahony. One, and his question is, what happened to the characters that didn't appear in the final issue? Dante, Sadiq, Connie, Kelly, Lance, Barbara, Pete, question mark. Well, Gregory O'Mahony, when it comes to the final issue of The Walking Dead, I thought that it would be cool to leave some vagueness into what the fates of a lot of characters were. I think that there's a tremendous amount of characters in The Walking Dead, and if I were to go through and list the final fates of all of these different characters, it would get tedious. You'd kind of get to a point where you'd be like, this is like the end of that Lord of the Rings movie where they just kept cutting to other people. And I was like, wait a minute, wasn't this movie over 10 minutes ago? I liked that movie. I'm not trying to throw shade, but yeah, I just thought it would be a better way to handle things. And I'm not saying that the characters that you listed are not important enough to have gotten a big scene at the end of the final issue. But I will say that I don't remember Barbara. So anyway, Gregory has some other questions. Will we get a sequel to The Walking Dead Typhoon? Had a lot of fun working on that with Wesley Chu. I think that's a great book. As it is right now, there are no plans for a sequel, but maybe I wouldn't rule it out for the future. Who knows? So stay tuned for that. Another question from Gregory. What happened to Claudia from The Alien, which I think is a reference to Walking Dead, The Alien, the fantastic book by Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin, where these two guys did one issue that made Charlie Adlard and I, who had done 193 issues, look bad. I have regrets. Claudia was eaten by a whale shortly after the end of that issue, and that's canon. Got another question from @mystory1669. Just use your real names, guys. Come on. The comic book ended with the death of Rick. Will the Walking Dead TV and movie franchise converge on the Grimes family, or will it move beyond the Grimes family as a central story? I would argue that it has already moved beyond the Grimes family as a central story. I think that it's cool that the Walking Dead comic book series was very much the story of Rick Grimes and by extension Carl Grimes when we get down to the end of it. But the television show is very much the story of the Walking Dead world. Rick Grimes has been the central focus for a lot of it. Michonne has been a central focus. Daryl Dixon has been a central focus. Negan has been a central focus. Might be more of a central focus in the future. I don't know. Stay tuned. We've got characters like Maggie with Lauren Cohan returning. that will also be a focus. So while the Rick Grimes story is definitely going to continue to be told in the form of these movies, um, that was the word movies. I don't know if that quite came out of my mouth the way I wanted it to, but anyway, we're telling the story of the world. So I would not expect for the Grimes family to ever become the central focus in the TV show because uh, Andrew Lincoln has moved on and he's doing movies now, and who knows if he'll ever come back to that TV show. Got a question from Camille is Life. Outside of the comics that have already been made into TV shows, which of your comics would you like most? Would you most like to see get a TV adaptation? Listen, I do not play favorites, but Oblivion Song, definitely Oblivion Song. No, I mean I don't know. If it happens to any of them, I'm very excited. I have to say that my central focus is just making cool comic books. I'd never make a comic book with the hopes that it would get turned into a television show or a movie. It's just a nice cherry on top when it happens. I think Oblivion Song would be a cool one though because there's a plethora of crazy monsters that Lorenzo De Felici has basically created whole cloth that I would love to see live on in some other form. I'd love to see them exist in 3 dimensions, running around, chasing, actors, Harrison Ford, I don't know, Ed O'Neill, be real cool. More from Camille. Uh, by the time we can watch this, we'll have read Firepower #1. Let's hope so. Can you share anything about the second issue? The second issue, well, I mean, first issue ends with a thing being on the last page, a startling thing. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read the first issue. First issue ends with a startling thing appearing on the page. The second issue, our main character Owen Johnson fights that thing. Question number 3. Let's see here. We'll have also read Negan Lives. Is there anything shocking we'll be reacting to? Is it really a one-shot? Yeah, look, I think most of you hopefully have already read Negan Lives by this point. Negan Lives very much ends in a way that pretty much tells you that it is not a one-shot. And I did that on purpose because I think that's funny. It's a one-shot. It does very much seem like it is setting up a continuing journey for Negan. It is not. Negan Lives sets up Negan's journey to go and recover his dead wife's body, who in Here's Negan, we saw him leave behind in the hospital where she was sick after she died. So he knows that her body is in a specific location, and he is inspired by the events of Negan Lives to finally put her to rest, to kind of pay tribute to this woman that he loves. And so that is what he does. He sets off on this journey to recover her remains. And that might be a very exciting journey that has a lot of twists and turns along the way. But if you pay close attention to Walking Dead 193 and you see the Negan panel that is at the very end of that, you will notice that Negan is at a different headstone putting flowers down. That is because he has already recovered her body and laid it to rest as he has intended at the end of Negan Lives. And so to a certain extent, the story of him recovering her body has a definitive ending that has already been set. And so do we really need to see that story? It might be fun. I don't know. Maybe someday we will, but there are no plans whatsoever at this point. And I kind of feel like that story, in some sense, has been told. There's a lot of gaps there, but you kind of get the idea. So that was kind of the fun element that I was playing with in Negan Lives there. At Oblivion Song Podcast, I just added the word song. It's actually at Oblivion Podcast. Maybe it is about the fantastic Tom Cruise movie Oblivion. I'm just kidding. I'm very well aware of this podcast, guys. Don't get upset. Someone's got to ask it. Any news on the Oblivion Song movie that was announced? Well, glad you asked. Our release date is going to be nobody knows because nobody knows any release dates. Now, I'm just kidding. Movie is still very much in development. We're working with our partners at Universal to bring this film to life. It is a slow-going process. We'll probably announce the development of it a little bit too soon, but it's something that is actively going on behind the scenes on a daily basis. I'm reviewing things and getting things in order, and progress is being made. Hopefully there will be news very soon, but unfortunately these kind of things happen, over a ever expanding timeline. And when we're announcing casting, that's when things will start to ramp up. So until we start announcing casting, just assume it's in progress. Austin Danielle 00, favorite Walking Dead issue/episode. Again, I don't like to play favorites. Also, not the biggest fan of my own work, if I'm completely honest. I don't experience it like other people experience it. So, it's just stuff I did. So it's almost like, what's the favorite sandwich you've ever made? I don't remember. But I'd have to say my favorite Walking Dead issue is probably the issue that Andrea died. Spoiler alert for anyone who is just now starting on the Walking Dead color reprints. I think that it was a fun issue. I mean, it wasn't a fun issue. It was a terribly emotional issue. It was an important issue. I'm very proud of the fact that Charlie Adlard, because of his unprecedented professionalism and capabilities, we were able to just, at the drop of a hat, expand that issue immensely, because that was not part of the plan. And I was able to contact him and be like, look, I messed up. Like, this issue needs to be something really special. The page count is going out of control. And he was like, just run with it, man. Just run with it. Let's do something cool. Like, this is Andrea here. We got to go all out. That was a issue that I think we're both really proud of. And I think it turned out well, and it was a good send off for that character that was, monumentally important to the series. And it was the issue that made me cry while I was writing it. So boohoo. But my favorite episode of the show is probably still Clear. Brought back Lenny James's Morgan. Excellent Michonne character work done by Scott Gimple in that episode. That really set the tone for Michonne's character in the show moving forward. Great Carl moments, great Rick moments. Really great episode. From JoJo and Jazzy. What are your favorite Skybound and non-Skybound comics? Boy. Non-Skybound comics, I really am anxiously awaiting the return of Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. That is one of my favorite comics. I love the work of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. I think that their recent work with Pulp is like a just absolutely spectacular comic that you should all be reading. There's a lot of great stuff out there. Trying to come up with something else that is not an Image comic, and it's very hard. Is Jana out by Chris Samnee? I'm looking forward to that. That is an Oni Press book, so that counts as a non-Image comic, but all of the Image comics are the best comics, so it's very hard for me to pick a comic that is not an Image comic. Anyway, as far as favorite Skybound comics that are not the ones that I write, I would say that Brandon Thomas and Kari Randolph's Excellence is one of my favorite comics. Inside Skybound are out. And I really love Birthright and Manifest Destiny as well. The new book, Stealth, is very good. There's a lot of great Skybound comics coming out, and that will continue to be the case very far into the future. Stillwater, great book. Chip Zdarsky and Ramon Perez. You guys are really going to love that one. Let's see here. Another one from JoJo and Jazzy. Which of your comics would you most like to see get a book spinoff like The Walking Dead and The Walking Dead Typhoon? I don't know. I think that, there's cool possibilities with all of them. I think that you could probably do a cool, creepy novel with Outcast, especially now that the Outcast series is wrapping up and it won't conflict with what we were doing in that book. There's some space to actually kind of explore that world. So I think that might be a fun one. I think that, the creepy nature of Outcast might lend itself to a cool novel. So that could be kind of fun. Neuro Heaven has another question for me. Is it possible to see a third season of Outcast on another network? Normally I would play these questions a little coyly and say, I don't know, you never know, but no, there is not a possibility, simply because the way that television works is, when you're making television, you have all these actors under contracts, and so, they can come back. It's not entirely impossible that we could wrangle everybody to do another season of the show at some point, if if it was like Jeff Bezos's favorite show and he wanted to pull it together and do another season on Amazon, that could possibly happen. Unfortunately, I am almost certain that Outcast is not Jeff Bezos's favorite show. So putting all those pieces back together is a very difficult process. So seeing Outcast again in television form might be impossible. But that means that I would say that the possibility of an Outcast movie in the future, I would not categorize that as impossible. Neuro Heaven also says, can you foresee Skybound taking an increased role of putting its more popular comics in animated form? Yeah, I think that is definitely a possibility. We've already done Super Dinosaur, and we're working on Invincible now. And I think that if Invincible ends up being a huge success, I think that you could see more of that. I know that our team at Skybound North is, ready to go on any kind of other animated stuff, and we might already have some things in the works. Who knows? But yeah, that is a definite possibility. TW Dead Daily says, do you have any plans for a spin-off or continuation of the Walking Dead comics? No, not really. I mean, outside of the Negan Lives special, I wouldn't expect anything like that. All right, I'm going to say Sweet LMJ Beer. Am I endorsing a independent beer company by mentioning this tweet? Who knows? They say, which of your characters do you most identify with? I mean, to a certain extent, I identify with all of them. Even horrible characters that do horrible things like Negan, just because there are certain aspects of my personality that get filtered through into all the characters that I write, because I am possibly a lazy writer that really does live by that write what you know thing, because he doesn't enjoy doing research. But there are characters like Glenn, when I started doing The Walking Dead, I was a former. I didn't deliver pizzas, but I worked at a pizza place. There are different aspects of his character that are much more in line with me at the time. As The Walking Dead went on, like I grew to identify with Rick more as a character, just because I had become a father, and when you become a parent, to a certain extent, the whole world is like the world of The Walking Dead, because you're constantly bombarded with dangers that your children may experience that you're trying to protect them from. And so, that kind of helped me identify with that character. What can we expect in season 11 of The Walking Dead? More Maggie, because Lauren Cohan is back. There's a lot of cool stuff planned for characters named Daryl and Carol. There's no Rick Grimes in the show anymore, so there's going to be some stories that are changed, which I'm very excited about. But we will be still, moving into some areas that are from the comics in some new and interesting and different ways that Angela Kang and the writing staff are expertly weaving. And I think that everyone is very excited about the renaissance that The Walking Dead show is kind of experiencing in the last few seasons. And I think Angela and Scott's leadership on the show has been great. And there's some really cool stuff planned that I think everybody can be very excited about. So I will continue being somewhat vague and move on to the next question. Angie 396769999. There's just that many Angies that wanted to be on Twitter. What do you like most in the development of Carol's character? Honestly, how inadequate it makes me feel as a writer. It keeps me hungry, and it keeps me working to see what the writing staff on The Walking Dead show, working in tandem with Melissa McBride, have been able to do with that character that I did very little with. I think that the character in the comic books was somebody that, I wanted to tell a specific kind of story with, and I did, but it was definitely someone that I did not see the potential in that, has existed in the television show character and has, gone on for many, many years to do amazing, crazy, awesome stuff. And it's really kind of shined a light on, an area of the comic where I, kind of fell short. And I think that that's actually a great thing. I think that, it reminds me that, there's more potential in any character than I could possibly foresee. And it makes me sometimes give characters a second look when I'm writing Firepower and Oblivion Song and Outcast and Die, Die, Die and all kinds of other books. And so it's really rewarding for me to see what's been done with that character. I think that, her strength and working alongside with her compassion is like a really great element. And I think Melissa has done this character amazing, justice, and really built it into something that I could never have foreseen. And so I find that extremely gratifying. At Maggie X Badass says, what could we expect from Maggie in season 11? I'm not telling you because I do not want to get in trouble, but I will say that it is all kinds of cool stuff. At Heather by the Sea says, what is a storyline you regret not putting in the Walking Dead comics? So I'm going to frame this by assuming that you mean, are there storylines that were in the Walking Dead TV show that I wished I had put in the comic book series? I could answer that by just saying Carol's entire arc, which would be a valid answer. But to be honest, I don't really, think of things that way. Like, I like the fact that there are a tremendous amount of stories that exist in the television show that do not exist in the comic. I think that that's a, really cool thing that makes you able to differentiate those two. And so I've never watched the show and thought, this is a spectacular story. I'm so happy with this. I wish I'd done it in the comic. I'm happy that the comic is different and that there are different things that you can get from those two things. At Real GW Brewer. Is this another microbrewery? What is the thing you regret most about the Walking Dead comics? Letting Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin do a single issue that makes us look bad. It was a really spectacular comic, available in hardcover form as of this month, so you should all check that out. But yeah, every now and then I say something offhandedly like, I just, I kind of sometimes wish I hadn't cut off Rick's hand because, there's different things that I had to work around because he didn't have his hand. And then, somebody runs an article on, I'm going to say comic book resources where the headline is like Robert Kirkman's biggest regret. I don't really have that many regrets. So don't do that. But yeah, no, I'm happy with how the story went, and I think any mistakes I made along the way actually kind of accentuated the series to a certain extent, and wouldn't have existed the way it existed if I hadn't made those mistakes. So I'm happy about those mistakes. At Danny Morales 89 says, what was the hardest, most heartbreaking thing you had to write in the Walking Dead comics? Easily Andrea's death. Definitely. There's a lot of heartbreaking stuff that happened in The Walking Dead, but that was the one that I think hit me the most, just because it was a character that I had lived with for a good long time. And I was very upset and sad to, see her go, even though I was hyper aware at the time of the fact that I was the one that was doing the thing that was causing me that pain. So it's definitely a weird experience, but Andrea's death, pretty heartbreaking. DCM 2019 says, and I'm trying to move a little quicker because I can see we're about to run out of time. Pretty impressed with the timing on that one. Have you ever thought of putting Clementine into the Walking Dead show? No. I think that Dixon only existing in the show, Clementine only existing in the video games, is a cool thing that makes those different versions of the Walking Dead have something unique about them that is appealing. VHack22 says, Firepower sounds like Iron Fist. How are they similar? How are they different? Sounds like Iron Fist. Listen, when we announced Invincible way back in the day, in the early days of the internet in 2003, there was a message board, I believe, on comicbookresources.com. I'm going to plug that website, where we had the announcement for Invincible, and someone replied, Invincible looks more like Static Shock to me. And I always got a chuckle out of that because I was like, this guy has no idea he either doesn't know anything about Static Shock or he doesn't know anything about Invincible. And I think that the Firepower Iron Fist comparisons are kind of the same. I think they both draw on martial arts stories of the past in somewhat similar ways. But I think by the time you get to Firepower issue 3, you'll be like, oh, yeah. These things aren't very similar at all. I'm going to say Paul with a 1 instead of an L, A. Silva. Will you be involved in the Rick movies? Yeah, I haven't really talked publicly about my involvement in those Rick Grimes movies that we're doing with AMC and Universal, but I am very involved in those. I'm talking to Andrew Lincoln quite frequently, working with David Alpert and Scott Gimple, working with Universal, AMC, getting that in shape. It's very important to us that these movies are spectacular. I think that to have Andrew Lincoln reprising his role as Rick Grimes is a very special thing. And if we were to do these movies in any way that was in any way lackluster, I think would be a disservice to him, a disservice to the character of Rick Grimes, and a disservice to the fans. And so, I've been very hands-on with shaping that story and making sure that things are on the up and up, and we're all working very hard to bring you the best possible movie, which is that and the pandemic are why there's been a bit of a delay in news about that. And so I've now probably already said too much, but yeah, though you'll be hearing more about that, and I am involved in that movie quite a bit. At Mike RB 2223 says, can we get an idea of what portion of the Invincible series will be covered in the first season of the animated Amazon TV show? No, you cannot. That would be spoiling things too much. I will say we will be starting at the beginning. So there's not any kind of time jump, so we're not going to start in the middle of the series or anything like that. But, we'll be going from there. We will be moving at a faster clip than the comic book did. So at the end of the 8th episode, we will be, I would say, long past the 8th comic book issue. So be on the lookout for that. Australian Abby, like, how did I do that? Ask this question. Who wins a battle of the Die brothers versus Nathan from Oblivion Song versus Rick from The Walking Dead before Invincible comes and kills whoever the winner is? Invincible definitely comes and kills whoever the winner is. Let's see here. Rick and Nathan from Oblivion Song both do not have superpowers. The 3 Die brothers are all highly trained assassins. And so they're kind of like the experts of killing. Despite Rick Grimes being real great at killing zombies, I don't think that he would be able to face those brothers. So I believe that we've got John, Paul, and George are going to wipe the floor with Nathan and Rick, and then would be instantly killed by Invincible because he has superpowers. Brian Cadagwu says, do you think someone like Invincible or Superman could survive in the Walking Dead universe? Foolish question. Shame on you, of course. Superpowers. The zombies can't even bite through their skin. Like, come on. Invincible, LNCK, I'm going to say. Link? I don't know. Who was your favorite Invincible villain to write? My favorite Invincible villain to write was Battle Beast, because I hate to reveal this, I was just writing Worf from Star Trek The Next Generation. It's one of my favorite characters. And Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I think we'll end with Colin Haas 7 says, why do you kill everyone I love? I should preface this by saying to anyone who just signed on to this, we're talking about works of fiction here. I'm not actually killing anyone in real life, I swear. But Colin, why do you kill everyone I love? It's a simple answer, Colin. I hate you. So anyway, that'll conclude our Comic-Con panel. I don't know what comes after this. I guess there's some kind of streaming thing where they're going to do something else after this, or I don't know if you just log into this. I have no idea. But check out skybound.com for some more news and things coming up. You can follow me on Twitter at Robert Kirkman, where I will sometimes go through my @replies and reply to people who say things like, Robert Kirkman doesn't reply to people here, or Robert Kirkman never answers questions, does he? Sometimes I'll see those and reply to them because I think it's funny. Most of the time, I leave those questions unanswered to create some kind of sense of mystique. It's not true. I'm just busy. Anyway, this has been a lot of fun. I hope that it was in some way watchable. I am a little worried that it might not be. But it is what it is. We're in a pandemic these days. It's tough out there. So I hope that we've offered you a little bit of a distraction. I'm going to go buy Transformers on eBay to complete my Comic-Con experience. And thank you for watching this. It's been a lot of fun. And hopefully I will see you at Comic-Con in person next year, where we will all work together to pretend that the year 2020 never happened. Thank you so much.